Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Centric. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are crime dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about The Old Man Season 2, Episode 4. A great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So we're picking up in the aftermath of last episode. Obviously, Tariq is trying his best to mediate the situation. It's like, hey, we didn't want this war. We know that Omar and his men, like, their actions do not reflect yours, but he wasn't even able to talk to the ministry directly. They're not going to listen. Like, things have gotten past that point. And so, obviously, we see the situation with Hamzad that even the doctor taking care of him kind of gave his sister the nod, like it's not gonna happen. Like it's too late. They can't save him, so he's only on borrowed time. So we see that Emily has been looking after Farouk because he's been like he won't go with anyone else. He got attached to Parwana just in that moment that. The little time they spent together, they latched on and connected, and especially considering how she's also someone his mom connected with too. So it's like I'm sure like being around Emily is like being around his mom to some extent. So, but essentially, like when everyone's gathered together, Tariq, is it Tariq or Tariq? Tariq, Emily. I'm going to butcher his mom's name. Is like I kept struggling with it last episode. I think it'd be like Kajida might be how you pronounce it. I'm sorry if I'm butchering it. And Hamzad. And because Tariq's like, we have 72 hours before everyone here is dead. So Harold and Dan / Johnny are waiting for Emily. They're like, don't worry, she's going to show up. But and I think it was interesting where Harold had this conversation with Dan / Johnny where he was like, yeah, like there was a shootout situation that happened a couple years back, and one of Emily's bullets ended up in the head of one of the people. She went through all the counseling. She came out okay. And then Dan had this line where he was like, yeah, but not all kills are the same, which he explains later on. But since I'm on the topic, I love it because I love Harold being like, okay, what did you mean? I know what you mean, but what did you mean? And he was like, the difference between someone killing out of, revenge or obligation or job or whatever, or even by accident, it's different from when you kill someone to show someone else that you love them. It's like she did that to show not only Hamzad, but everyone. It's like, yo, I am willing to get my hands bloody because I do love this place. Because it's like, it might have been a short amount of time, but something did change in Emily that, he's like, there's this complicated feeling of you kind of have to mourn her and also welcome this new person because it's like a part of her died and now a part of her is being born, and it's like we're all figuring this out. Emily's trying to say like I'm still that same person, but it's like, is she? That's always been Dan / Johnny's biggest concern, and Harold doesn't share those concerns, or at least he doesn't wear it on his sleeves the way Dan did. Like you could see how heavy it weighs on him, but it doesn't seem like Harold's as concerned. But I guess he doesn't view it. He definitely doesn't view it the same way, because for Harold, it's like, yeah, someone can change without it being some catastrophic thing. It's only a catastrophic thing when they look to someone else who's making it a catastrophic thing. So it's like you making it a big deal will make Emily think it's a big deal. So as long as you don't, it's fine. It's like someone changing is not all bad, because it's like it's not like every aspect of her is going to change. Who she is to her core is still there. There might be some other elements of her that might be different, might be the same. So just kind of keep that in mind. So I just thought that was an interesting conversation because like at the end of the day, even she's not fully aware of how different she is post all of this, because we're talking about something that's been hanging over her head for like 3 decades, like this lie that she's kind of lived in and been suffocated with, as like Tariq puts it later on. It's like you were lied to. You had this. You were living this perpetual fraud. Your circumstances are different from what Tariq wants. So let's circle over to basically Harold and Dan / Johnny are being sent back to the U.S. to resolve this Morgan boat situation. He cut off the funds and froze the funds for Hamzad's people. And it's like, if we do not get the money flowing again, the money that was used for protection that kept them safe. These were their safety nets, and those safety nets have been cut now. She's like, I need you to go, and she's like, I promised them that you would do this. She's like, I have to stay here because these people need to be protected. This needs to be protected because this is also her home and it means something to her. And it's like, I know that you would, if I left, I wouldn't be the person you know, and if you guys refuse me, you wouldn't be the men that I know you are, and I know you'll do this for me because I'm asking you to. So, but you have Tadic, who, for him, it's like, he's always had plans of, I want to get my family out of here. Yes, we have roots here, we have ties here, which, he's like, oh, Hamza took you to the cemetery, Parwana, which she's not even introducing, which I even love that. He's like, oh, I'm Tadic. She's like, I'm Parwana. She took a beat. Like I said, still figuring it all out. He's like, yes, but she's like, I'm Parwana. And he's like, yes, amongst other things. I'm like, well, it's kind of unnecessary to add that, but that was, it was meant to be a sticking point. But for him, it's like, he's trying to convince his family, his mom, his cousins. He's like, I tried to convince them to leave because he's like, I was sent away to live in the States when I was young. At the time, I was told it was because, I was bright, I could be so much more, and I could do so much more. But eventually, he's like, I came to realize the truth of it all. My uncle could not stand to look at me or hear the sound of my laugh because it just reminded him too much of you. That void of you being gone. And he's like, that was kind of a heavy thing to kind of have to deal with, of like, yeah, I look like him, yet he's pushing me away because of that purpose. And it's like, it's kind of like, yeah, he's kind of saying like, yeah, that kind of fucks with you a little bit. But it's like, yeah, I've always thought of like getting my family out of here, somewhere they could be safe, where he's like, where girls can learn math and sons can do more, could be more. And he's asking Emily to be the one to convince the others to go. It's like, I've been asking them for so long. You, on the other hand, it coming from you could carry so much weight. You don't know how much your word can carry in this situation. And Emily had brought up the whole, like, I lived in comfort and all that, and I drowned in. He's like, yes, your circumstances are different from what I'm asking. This would be a family moving together. Your life was built, sadly, around fabrications and lies. This would be like, no, we know the truth. My family is moving together. Your family circumstances were kind of complicated at bare minimum. We could at least say complicated. So it's an interesting conundrum that Emily finds herself in, especially because Hamzad wanted her to leave. He's like, because she's like, don't tell me I don't belong and I can't fight for this place. He's like, no, I'm not going to tell you you don't belong, but I am going to ask you to leave, not just to protect you. It's like, there are places I need to support that, like, it isn't just this place. There's so much. He's like, I need you to go back to the beginning. And he wanted her to go with Tadic to go to America. And he's like, he's doing that to keep you safe. And she's like, I know. And sadly, Hamzad dies because the only person who knew how bad his situation was his sister, because he didn't want, as she says, like he didn't want Tadic or Emily to know, like, he's not good at goodbyes, and he didn't want it to be a goodbye. And it's so sad that the circumstances have led to this situation that they didn't get to spend a lot of time together. But it was still something that's haunted Hamzad for years. He got some closure on it, and seeing his daughter, her willingness to fight, and he did see, like, there is love there. So, despite how complicated Dan/Johnny feels about her putting that bullet in Omar, versus like how Hamzad feels about it, how everyone else feels about it, because Emily talks to Kashida about, okay, so she's like, okay, I need to tell you the truth about what happened to Hamza. And she's like, I know. And she's like, how? She's like, we know. The fact of the matter is, it wasn't a Taliban soldier, but the only people who know the truth is me and my son. No one else. Because your father didn't want you to have to, like, he wanted you to choose whether to stay or to go, but he never wanted you to feel like if you stayed here, you would be continuously blamed. It's like, no, your father died protecting you from a Taliban soldier. That's the story we're going with. Your father gave his life up to you for you, so it's up to you to kind of decide at the end of the day what you want to do. And I get that, because it's like, I don't want you to feel like this obligation out of guilt of, oh my God, like this all happened because of me. He's like, no one will ever know the truth of it's like, right, all they'll know is you were the one that convinced 2 Americans to go back to the US to help resolve our current predicament. So at the end of the day, the question becomes, what will Emily do? I don't see her going. I see her staying, but who knows? With everything playing out the way it does in the episode, who knows? But yeah, Harold and Dan/Johnny have a complicated task before them. It's like, right, Harold's like, you do not talk. I will handle talking to the old man because it's like, we'll most likely be able to get what we want that way. But Johnny's like, no, we won't. He's like, I don't know why you're deluding yourself and believing you could say anything that would change that stubborn bastard's mind. And then Harold's like, wait, are you going to threaten him? He's like, yo, we promised Emily we'd do whatever we could. He's like, that's not what we had. He's like, well, it seems like we heard it seems like we heard that same conversation 2 different ways, Harold. And he's just like, no, he's an old man. And even being in his state, that man will not submit to what you want. Even if you torture him and beat it out of him, it's not going to be the result you want. And he's like, all right, you better talk fast, Harold. So they go in, they talk to him, and Harold is pleading with him, but Morgan's like, you don't know the situation. You don't know what story you're in. You're coming to me asking me for this, not realizing, hey, maybe I'm doing this for a sound enough reason. Maybe it isn't just me being angry that I didn't get what I wanted, that you guys are kind of not going the direction I want. Maybe it's because I know more than you guys do. You think you know the story, you don't. And lo and behold, who steps in? The dogs. So I was like, wait, weren't the dogs with? And lo and behold, comes in Zoe. And it's like, God knows how long she's been with Morgan. Well, to be fair, it's been like 3-ish weeks, maybe a little bit more now. I don't know how long. The first 2 episodes happened pretty quickly, so I don't know. Maybe it's been like, because it has been at least like nighttime at one point in time, like during episode 1. So it's still, they were probably, I mean, you also transport and stuff like that, so it's probably been maybe like closer to a month now since they've seen each other. But obviously for him, it's like, oh, you got her involved. And Morgan's like, me? You started all this. You're the one. The moment you put her in trunk, gave her a new name, you got her involved in this. Fact of the matter is, I'm just trying to make sure all of us get out of this alive, because it turns out Zoe tried to get in contact with Nina, Hamzad's lawyer, for the purposes of trying to help their circumstance and situation, but Zoe was never able to get in contact with Nina. However, Morgan, who's been keeping an eye on the situation, took an interest in her. He was like, oh, she surprises me. Very few people surprise me nowadays. So basically his perspective on things is like, right, this isn't just about money. We're talking about, like, this is lithium. Lithium does make the world go round because it does go into like microchips and batteries. There's a lot of technological stuff that lithium is very important about. And it's like, you control that, you control a lot. And that deposit is very important to the U.S. And it's like, until we found out that someone else was angling for it. And it's like, who? Pavlovich. And it's like, Dan's like, no. Considering their history, there's no way Hamzad would ever like side with him. And then Morgan's like, oh, I'm glad you believe that. Which I'm like, why would he though? That was like, well, I guess along with everything else Hamzad's done, it's all been for the purposes of he's been driven by going after Emily or Poana. So I'm wondering, could it be a situation of he joined forces with him? It's like, once again, that conversation of Hamzad never, like, despite having a lot of foresight in his own capacity, he never took the time to really fully consider the price that would pay, because none of them fully knew what it would be. But also, he didn't care. He saw his goal in mind. He saw his daughter. He didn't think about the consequences. Like, he just wanted her, you know. And he's like, once again, he said it himself, sorry, not sorry. It sucks that things have played out this way, but he got to die knowing his daughter and getting to see her and getting her to see him and know herself. As long as that's something he's able to have accomplished before leaving this world, then it leaves him knowing, like, okay, then I trust her and I believe in her. So, but I love that conversation with between Johnny and Morgan, where he was just like, all right, he's like, I told you who she was to Hamza. And he was like, Morgan was like, no, you didn't. Because I would remember if you did. He's like, I came to you. He's like, considering the circumstances, I came to you and I said, she does not have to be your granddaughter for you to help her, no more than she has to be my daughter for me to ask. He's like, out of short of spelling it out, that was pretty clear. Because he's like, you're not an idiot, Morgan. You read the situation. You knew what it was. We can cut the bullshit and pretense. You knew. I might not have expressly said it, but you knew. You picked up on it. There's no way you, being you, never figured that out. You knew in that moment, but you decided to help. And now it's like, I am asking you to do this because she's in danger. And it's like, we have our issues. We do. But I've done what you've asked of me. So I'm asking you to do this. But then Morgan's still saying, he's like, you're saying that you can't find a way. It's because you haven't tried to find a way yet. So I'm asking you to please do this. Because we can't wait for Nina to sit down and talk to Zoe. Because apparently because they did hit it off at that party. He's like, we don't have a week. Because like they have such a limited amount of time, at Hamzad's village to like be able to survive all of this. So, but Morgan's like, come back tomorrow, and Dan got in front of him and is always like, yo, calm down, talk to me, and I will like come outside with me. And but Dan was like, move, and then one of the dogs starts growling at him, and he looks at it like, really, you traitor? But it's like, hey, they've come to care for her, which I love that line later on when Zoe was like, thank you for standing out for me, and then looks to the other one and it's like, and you, because you're like, right, it was only one of them that stood up for her. It's like, the other one's probably like, what you want me to do? I'm torn between, you're making me choose between mom and dad, and I guess one chose mom, one chose dad in that sense. So I think that's kind of cute. But Harold does confirm, he's like, right, what Johnny said is right, but he's just kind of like, he basically tells Harold, like, you were never cut out for, like, this type of thing. Like, kind of, you didn't always handle it the best way. He's like, in fact, you should have never, like, let Johnny in. Like, yeah, you should have just left him on a curb. And it's like, well, Harold knows how complicated his decision made. But it's like, the history there and who they are to each other, who they are to him, and who he is to them. It's like, it's a complicated thing. It's also like, you're no better than Harold. You're just a lot more stubborn. You're both stubborn. All three of you are stubborn. You take after each other so much. But the fact of the matter is, at the end of the day, like, you are just like Harold. You are going to cave in. You just don't want to admit it to his face. And that's even what Zoe says. It's like, yo, you two are so alike that he wants to help you. He just doesn't want to like be looking at your face while he's helping you. So it's like, right, he's a sweet old man, and he's like, oh, Zoe. She's like, okay, he's at least to me, he's a sweet old man. It's like, yeah, he probably shows you his nicer side, which even she's like, oh, yeah, you were right, Morgan. Like, the moment you got around Dan, you said that I would see a side of you I would not like. So, but it's like, yeah, help him. And it's like, are you really asking me that? She's like, yes, because I want you to, but also because I believe you're going to, because you want to. You just won't admit it. So, but before things could even progress any further, shit pops off, and Morgan kills a guy, but then someone else kills him. So it's like, damn, that same episode, Faraz Hamzat is dead, and now so is Morgan Bow, and it is Pavlovich who is behind all of this. Yeah, he's like, well, I'm curious to see what the world's going to be like without him around. He wasn't the target. The target was, maybe it was Zoe as well. So that kind of means like Nina's that in-between person, because I guess she wanted to confirm Zoe was still there. I don't know if he knows that Dan was there, because it's, once again, it's like two people. So it might be Harold and Dan that were the targets. I don't know, but like, so I guess maybe Nina was playing both sides. My point was like, I don't know if Nina and Faraz were on the same page about the Pavlovich thing, or was she kind of two-timing him, or what? Not less she's been not less we think she's been out and about, and maybe Pavlovich has had her this entire time trying to, I don't know. We'll probably have to wait to see, but it's like, in Dan's mind, it's like, right, the old man is gone now. So it's going to be interesting to see, like, right, he's fresh in it. It just happened. He's looking at the old man's dead body. He's got his complicated feelings about it. But I'm sure we won't really dive into those feelings that both him and Harold have, that, oh, who would have thought the last time we met him would have been the last time, you know? So I'm sure they're going to have to deal with that. I mean, Harold's also got to deal with the fact is Marion's been calling him, and he's like, yeah, I was hoping like most things, you ignore it long enough, it just disappears. It's like, well, he's like, oh, because Dan was like, oh, you've ignored her call like 3 times. He's like, no, I've ignored it 5 times. So we'll see what happens on that front. But yeah, it's all about, you know, for Pavlovich, it's like, oh, we've got to get rid of any loose ends, and there's plenty of them running around. So we are at the halfway point in the season. I'm so curious to see where all of this ends up taking us on both, as we're going to be bouncing back and forth between both sides of the show. Thanks the U.S. based side of things, everything with Pavlovich. I mean, I know we're technically making it 3 side of things, but I'm sure like that's more so going to, well, I was about to say, because like he's in the middle of that Venn diagram, because obviously what's happening with the deposit affects like Emily and them, because like this was supposed to be their last ditch effort was Morgan to kind of satiate that whole situation, but they've also got to deal with it on the state side with like Dan, Zoe, and Harold. We do see before he got shot, he did type on his phone, so he probably sent out a message or something that kind of like a break glass in case of emergency type of situation. There might be a contingency plan set in place that all he had to do was put in a code or something. I didn't know if he was calling someone, but it might just be a shorthand of like, all right, whatever his final words, like, oh, before I die, this needs to be activated type of thing. So we'll ultimately have to wait to see where the next episode ends up taking us going forward with all of this. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.